Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a single morning that literally changed the world forever. We're going to dive deep into the attack on Pearl Harbor, breaking down not just the sheer chaos of what happened that day, but the complex, simmering geopolitical background that made it happen and how it instantly transformed the entire globe. Picture the scene for a second. It's December 7th, 1941, a perfectly peaceful Sunday morning in Hawaii. Sailors aboard the American warships docked in the harbor were enjoying a well-deserved day off. Families across the island were getting ready for church. The sky was clear, the water was completely calm, and absolutely no one expected anything unusual. It's just a massive, stark contrast to the absolute devastation that was literally minutes away from tearing through this quiet harbor. Part 1. A growing conflict. The harbor background. Okay, let's back up a bit because to understand the attack, we really need to look at the harbor's background and the tension building up to it. In the late 1930s, there was this massive global chess match going on. Japan was aggressively expanding its empire all across Asia, invading territories just to gobble up valuable resources. And the United States? Well, they firmly opposed this. To back up that opposition, the US had actually strategically moved its entire Pacific fleet right to Pearl Harbor. The harbor was meant to be a powerful physical deterrent. But at the same time, the US was hitting Japan with really severe economic sanctions and strict trade restrictions. Now, what's really fascinating here is how cutting off just a single resource triggered a massive strategic crisis. Japan's economy, and particularly its military machine, relied heavily on imported oil. So when the US sanctions choked off that critical supply, it basically put a ticking clock on Japan's imperial ambitions. They were backed into a corner of their own making, and their leadership felt they had to make a drastic, immediate move. You can see how this creates a deadly chain reaction, right? Japan desperately needs oil to fuel its expansion, but those devastating US sanctions are starving them of it. Japanese leaders ultimately concluded that war with America was now completely unavoidable. And they figured if war is inevitable, we absolutely have to strike first. Their goal was incredibly audacious: destroy the American Pacific Fleet right there at its harbor base before it could ever interfere with Japan's plans in Asia. Part 2. The secret plan. So knowing you want to strike the American fleet is one thing. Actually pulling it off is a whole different ballgame. The strategy fell to Japanese Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, and the sheer scale of this operation was staggering. He sent 6 aircraft carriers and over 350 aircraft all the way across the massive Pacific Ocean. And here's the craziest part. They did all of this in strict, absolute radio silence. Just imagine the extreme discipline required to move a fleet of that size across the ocean entirely undetected. The crucial point is that this entire operation hinged on catching the naval base at Pearl Harbor completely off guard. Without total surprise, the Japanese fleet would be entirely exposed and highly vulnerable, and the whole thing would be a disaster. If the Americans detected them early, the element of shock would just vanish into thin air. Part 3. The attack on the harbor. Let's drop right into the morning of December 7th. At exactly 7:55 a.m., the first wave of Japanese aircraft appears over Pearl Harbor. At first, a lot of Americans actually thought they were friendly planes on a drill, but then the bombs began to fall. Sirens started wailing across the island. The Japanese had achieved their total surprise. And in less than 2 hours, a second wave would come and go, leaving a permanently altered, completely devastated landscape in its wake. The specific damage inflicted on the American battleship fleet was just horrific. The USS Oklahoma was struck by multiple torpedoes and actually capsized. The USS West Virginia sank right there at its berth. But the absolute worst, the most devastating blow, struck the USS Arizona. An armor-piercing bomb penetrated the ship's deck and detonated its ammunition magazine. This resulted in a catastrophic explosion that literally tore the mighty ship apart. 1,100. That is the number of crew members who lost their lives aboard the USS Arizona alone in that single massive explosion. It's a staggering, solemn number that really brings home the sudden human tragedy of that morning. Yet, amidst all that fire, across the harbor, sailors display incredible bravery, risking absolutely everything to pull trapped crewmates from the burning, oil-slicked waters. But the devastation wasn't just on the water, it was absolute chaos in the skies, too. Japanese aircraft simultaneously struck American airfields all across Hawaii. Fighter planes and bombers were parked wingtip to wingtip on the ground, which made them exceptionally easy targets. The American air defenses were essentially crippled before they could even launch.
Desperate pilots were literally scrambling onto the tarmac to get anything into the air, engaging the attackers despite completely overwhelming odds.
Part 4. The Cost of Infamy. When the second wave finally departed and the thick black smoke began to clear, the true toll emerged. 2,400. That's the total number of Americans killed during the 2-hour assault. It was a profound, sudden loss of life that sent absolute shockwaves rippling across a nation that had literally gone to sleep at peace. Families all over the country anxiously gathered around their radios, desperate for any updates about loved ones stationed in Hawaii. The sheer material cost left America entirely stunned. Over 1,000 people were wounded. 8 battleships, which were the absolute pride of the fleet, were either damaged or completely destroyed. Hundreds of aircraft were lost. The once peaceful harbor was essentially transformed into a graveyard of shattered ships and twisted wreckage. Japan had dealt a massive, undeniable tactical blow.
Part 5. A day that changed history.
But the story doesn't end in that wreckage. The very next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt stood before Congress and delivered a line we all know today, calling December 7th a date which will live in infamy. Those short, incredibly powerful words had an immediate impact. They brilliantly galvanized the nation in an instant, cementing a completely unified American resolve. The geopolitical dominoes began to fall almost immediately. December 7th, the attack happens. December 8th, Congress quickly votes and the U.S. officially declares war on Japan. And then, shortly after that, Japan's allies, Germany and Italy, declare war on the United States. In the blink of an eye, this single, localized surprise attack acted as the ultimate catalyst, pulling America fully into a truly global conflict.
So, taking a step back and looking at everything we've uncovered, we really have to ask, did Japan actually achieve its goal here? Think back to their original objective: to totally neutralize the fleet so they could expand in Asia without any U.S. interference. Let's analyze how that actually played out. Well, the reality is pretty complex. Yes, in the short term, it was definitely a tactical success for Japan. The Pacific Fleet was severely damaged. But strategically, in the long run, it was a massive failure. By pure chance, the incredibly crucial American aircraft carriers were not at Pearl Harbor that day, meaning the U.S.'s most important naval assets totally survived. Furthermore, Japan made a fatal miscalculation about American morale. Instead of terrifying the U.S. into staying out of the war, the attack completely, irreversibly united the American people. That attack transformed tragedy into unified action overnight. America mobilized on a scale the world had never seen before. Millions of citizens rallied to support the war effort. Factories vastly increased their production, instantly shifting gears to build tanks, ships, and planes. Young men lined up at recruiting offices for an unprecedented wave of enlistment. The sleeping giant hadn't just been awakened, it was ready for a fight. Today, the physical legacy of that morning is still preserved. The sunken hull of the USS Arizona continues to rest beneath the waters of Hawaii. It serves as this incredibly solemn, powerful memorial to the victims and the profound bravery shown that day. It stands as a permanent reminder of exactly how quickly peace can be shattered. I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. How did a single, peaceful morning permanently reshape the entire trajectory of the 20th century? From the geopolitical chess match over oil and harbor control to the devastating loss of human life, the attack on Pearl Harbor created immense global ripples that we still feel today. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I really hope you walk away with a deeper understanding of exactly how and why this historical flashpoint changed our world forever.